Hi everybody, this is the Unit 1 Day 8 notes. Today we're going to focus on notation, which is a little bit more of what we did on Day 7. We're talking about domain and range. We're going to talk more interval versus inequality today. So if you weren't feeling super great about it, don't worry, we're doing it again. I'm Mrs. Costello again. If you have me or if you don't have me, I just did this Day 7 video and I'm up in R13 if you have questions or just want to come say hi. So, all right. We're going to fill out this table that kind of talks about all the different kinds of notation that you might see, and I'm going to be really honest with you on which ones are like super important and which ones we probably don't use a whole lot, but it's good to know. So, when you have what's called an open interval, okay, this means you have a set of numbers greater than A, less than B. Now, I know you're kind of like, I don't really understand what that means. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you on the graph first, because the graph actually might be the most familiar for you. So open interval, remember in Algebra 1 where we talked about, okay, when it's open, you put an open circle like that on your graph and you kind of connect them like this. This is that greater than A and less than B. It makes that like that and inequality. That's what it looks like on a graph. Now, if we had the inequality first before the graph, we know that open circle means no lines under our inequality. So if I was going to write this as an and inequality, I would start with A because that's my smallest, less than X, less than B, kind of like that, right? Those two match. Those two are those ones should be most familiar with you. Now here's our new ones. We'll do our set notation first. So with our set notation, the set notation is kind of funky. And I'm going to be really honest with you, we don't use it a whole lot, but it's good to know. So with set notation, when we did a set of domain and range, we use those curly brackets. So I'm going to put those guys in there, curly bracket. And then you always start with the variable. Okay, so this is the curly bracket means the set of, like, it's just using shorthand because it's really hard to write. We don't want to write out the set of and write long sentences. So the set of all of the numbers that represent X. And then we're going to put this line, and this line means such that. Now, all you do after the such that is you put your inequality just right in there, such that A is less than X and X is less than B, which is pretty much what happened over here where it said greater than A, right? X is bigger than A, but X is smaller than B. Okay. Again, this one's kind of funky. We don't use it a whole lot. Now the interval notation, this was the new part. When you do interval, when you don't have the lines underneath in your inequality, right, or you have the open circles, you're going to use parentheses because it means that it's open. It does not include. So we're just going to go smallest to biggest, A to B, and that's how you do your interval notation. Now we're going to fill these out for the 3 more situations, and then we're going to do some examples where we practice with this. Closed interval. Okay, so closed interval is going to be the exact same thing. Like if you look at the words, it's the same until we get this or equal to. So that's telling me that my everything is pretty much going to be like the on the graph. Now the circles are going to be closed because it's or equals to, right? Because I started with the graph last time. So closed, closed, still connected. Now that means that my inequality is going to look exactly the same as above, except we want to say or equal to. So A is less than or equal to X and X is less than or equal to B. All right. Now with our set notation, remember we're going to put in those curly brackets to say the set of all of the numbers X such that, insert this guy right here. A is less than or equal to X, which is less than or equal to B. I know it's kind of small. There we go. Now for our our interval, if it's closed, if I have the closed circles, I'm going to have brackets to say brackets mean or equal to. So A is my smallest, 2B is my biggest. That's that interval, smallest to biggest always. So open or not equal to is parentheses. Brackets means like it's equal to, it can include it. And we will get used to this, I promise. All right. Now we're talking on the next two, we're talking about an infinite interval. So let's just look at what the words say. The words say the set of numbers where x is greater than a. On this one, it actually might be smart to start with the inequality part right here. Okay, so x is greater than a, right? Now on our graph, we know how to graph that, right? On A, there's no line underneath, so you'd put an open circle, and then this inequality is pointing to the right, so you draw your line to the right, and it's going on and on forever because it's talking about everything that's greater than A, and there's tons of numbers that are greater than A. Let's do our set next. So this is the graph, set. So same thing, right? Start with your curly brackets, the set of x such that inequality x is greater than a. All the numbers where x is greater than a. All right, now our interval. Remember, we go smallest to biggest. Our smallest is going to be a, right? Because that's our starting point. That's the smallest thing that we see. So I'm going to start with a. And a has an open circle, so you're also going to put a parenthesis on a. Then you're going to list your biggest. Now, it's going on and on and on and on and on forever, so the biggest is going to be infinity. And remember, on day 7, I told you guys, you never ever put a bracket around infinity because we don't know where infinity ends, so we're not including it. It's going to be a parenthesis because it's never included. It's just going on forever. We don't know where the end is. And then the last one is going to be a negative interval, so we're pretty much going to do opposite of everything we did up here. But let's read the words first. A set of numbers where x is less than or equal to b. Okay, so x less than or equal to b, like that. So that means on b, I'm going to put a closed circle because it said or equals to. And the inequality sign is pointing to the left. That's where the smaller numbers are, so I'm going to draw my line over there. And my arrow to say, okay, everything's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. On the set, we're going to start with our curly brackets. Okay. So all of the numbers x such that x is less than or equal to b, and then close it. Now with our interval, we always go smallest to biggest, right? So our smallest is an arrow. It's going on forever in the small direction. So we're going to start with that negative infinity. And then it goes all the way to our biggest, which is b. So I'm going to end with b, but you have to be careful because b has a closed circle, so we're going to bracket that, like that. Okay, I know it's kind of funky. We are going to do 4 graphs, and we're going to practice with all of the interval, the set, and the inequality notation on all of those. There might be like 1 or 2 where I kind of let you guys do it, but we will see. Okay, so let's look at this first one right here. Number 1. Okay. What I would do, what I think would be smart, because there's a start and a finish, is I would write those points on the graph of your start and finish, so then you kind of have an idea when you go to write any of your notations. So let's see. We start at -9 and 1. And then this point right here is at 9, 9. Because then I have my start and my finish, and that's going to be really easy. Now you can start with any of these, okay? Because we're doing the domain and the range and inequality, set, and interval. Remember, the domain is the x and the range is the y. So because I have the start finish set up, honestly, I would start with the interval, but it's totally up to you. We can also just go in order from inequality to set. So if we're starting with inequality, remember you start with your smallest. So -9, and then the biggest is 9, You got to put X in the middle and those less than or equal to inequalities because we have closed circles on our graph. You can just roll right into the set from there because you have the inequality. So you can start with the set of X such that, and then put your inequality in there. -9 less than or equal to X less than or equal to 9. Okay, again, we don't use set a whole lot, but it's good to know. And then your interval, remember your interval is smallest to biggest. So -9 to +9. Now, I started with inequality for the domain. For the range, let's switch it up. Let's start with the interval because I think that's easier. You might not think that's easier, and that's okay. Okay, it's totally up to you. But let's start with interval and see how it goes. So with interval, remember you start with smallest to biggest. So my smallest y is going to be this 1. My biggest y is going to be that 9. Okay, and they're closed circles again. So we're going to bracket it. 1 is the smallest, 9 is the biggest, bracket it again. Now my range is going to look identical, or the inequality on the range is going to look identical to the one on the domain, except we're going to have a y in there. So we're going to start with our smallest, 1 less than or equal to y, less than or equal to 9. And then with our set, we're good to go, right? The set of y, all numbers y, such that 1 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 9, close the set. So there's 1. Let's look at number 2. Okay. On number 2, the arrow got cut off, but it is going on and on and on and on forever, down and to the right. So we do have a start finish on this, or we have a beginning on this one or an end, depending on which direction you're looking at. So we will have some infinities, okay? So we have to think about what exactly is going on with our x's and our y's. This point right here is at 2, -3. I'm going to write that because that's going to be helpful for me when I'm doing my domain and range. So let's think about what the x's are doing. Yes, the arrow is pointing down, but that means it's going down and to the right because here's the bigger x's and it's just going to keep getting bigger. So I have big x's and I just said it's pointing down, so you might as well write small y's. Big x's, small y's. If you want, this one might be easier to start with the inequality on. So since the x's are getting bigger, I'm going to say x is greater than. I'm not going to put the or equals to because this dot right here is open. So we don't need to put an or equals to. So x is greater than 2 because that's the x. For my set, I can go ahead and jump into that. The set of all numbers x such that x is greater than 2. All right, so if x is getting bigger, right, that means the 2 is going to be my smallest. So I'm going to start with 2 on my interval, smallest to biggest. And if they're getting bigger, that means the biggest is infinity, and it's going to go on and on and on forever. So 2 to infinity is my interval. Now let's talk y's. So the y's, it said small y's. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the inequality on the y's for the range. Small y's mean I need to write y is less than, and then the y is -3. Now I can hop into my set notation. So the set of, oh, that's a bad squiggly line. I know mine are bad, but that was really bad. Okay. The set of y such that y is less than -3. And close set. All right, so since those guys are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, that means my smallest is going to be -infinity because it's going on and on forever. Lots of small numbers. And then the biggest is going to be -3. Oh my gosh, sorry. And I'm going to put a parenthesis because of that open circle. Okay, so it's not included. Okay. Why don't you try number 3? So pause your video right now. Try number 3 on your own. When you unpause the video, I will have the answers up there. And if you're not sure about it, you can definitely ask your teacher or ask me. So pause your video now, do number 3 on your own. So those are the answers to number 3. Check them. Maybe you made a couple just teeny tiny little like notation mistakes. Correct those. If you aren't sure, what you did wrong, check with your teacher, check with me. Okay, ask questions in class tomorrow. Okay, number 4, last one. On this one, okay, you have a parabola and it's facing downwards. Let's do the x's first. Now with the x's, right, if you look at the x's, the smallest x you hit, arrow, okay? But also the biggest x that you hit is another arrow too. And I know those guys are facing down, but even when they're going down, they're still going in the left and the right direction forever and ever and ever at the same time. Okay, so that means I'm looking at an all real numbers situation. Okay, so with the inequality, for me personally, I'm fine with you writing all real numbers. I'm not really sure like what your other teachers would like you to do, because the correct like inequality notation is negative infinity, less than x, less than infinity. But like I accept this, you'll have to check with your teacher. And then on the set, I also accept this, the set of x such that, and then I would put like all real numbers, like that's fine, or x equals, and then this is like all real numbers. Sorry, that like, it's an R with an extra little stick at the end. But you can also put that inequality in there that I just put, right? Negative infinity, less than or equal, not equal to, sorry, less than x, less than infinity. So just check with your teacher, see what they like. And then the interval is straightforward, negative infinity to infinity. There's not really another way to do that interval, so like that part is good. Okay, let's talk range. So I said it was a downward facing parabola. So when you're doing a downward facing parabola, you know those y's are getting smaller and smaller and smaller all the time, right? Small y's. Okay, that means I would do the inequality first, right? Y is less than or equal to. I know there's no circle, but your vertex right here is always included. So that's why you put the or equals to, because it's part of the line. Like there's no gaps there, there's no open circle. Okay. Now the y's end right there at 1. So y is going to be less than or equal to 1. Your set is the set of y's such that y is less than or equal to 1. All right. Now, small y's means I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller forever. So I'm going to start with negative infinity on the interval. And I'm going all the way to positive 1. And I'm going to bracket that because we are including it. Alrighty. So that's it for day 8. Again, if you have questions or you're just still really not feeling that interval notation, please get help in class from your teacher or from me. Otherwise, like, you guys are good to go. So have a good day.